Thanks, Mark, and I'd just now also like to introduce Rod Willis. Rod's travelled out with his wife Kathy just to be here at the conference. First time to New Zealand. Rod's had 23 years in the food industry. He's a director of natural specialty foods at Dot Foods, one of the US's largest, well, the largest food redistribution company in the US. He's going to talk to you about their business. He's also founder of a smaller company, Steakhouse Direct. So please, a warm welcome for Rod Willis.
Good morning. It's our first time here to New Zealand, and one of the first things I thought when I got here was, what type of questions could possibly be asked? And I was thinking, is it going to be food service or retail? Is it going to be chilled or frozen? And in reality, it was Hillary or Donald. So I wasn't sure exactly how to answer that question last night, and I still don't know. I don't know that I'll have an answer for that even by the time we leave, but we may have to have a drink and talk about that one. So I appreciate everybody's warm welcome here to New Zealand. We're blown away personally by the hospitality and just by the physical beauty of this country that you have. So thank you for having us. What I thought I would do today is really talk at a high level about what's going on in the U.S. as it relates to different areas of the food business, and then I'll get into a little bit about what Dot does in a minute. But before we get there, I wanted to just at least talk to you a little bit about what's going on the culinary side. So right now what's happening is there are lots of different groups in the U.S. that are pushing different things. One is a chef-driven fast casual concept, authentic, unique, a different type of experience that also ties in with natural ingredients, environmental sustainability. No antibiotics is a big thing. And that was touched on, I think, in a couple presentations ago earlier this morning. Also ethnic-inspired breakfast items. This is something that's fairly new on the scene. There's people that are making their own meat, so sausage in the back of a restaurant type of thing. There's a big trend in food trucks, street tacos, some of this type of thing. If you've been in the U.S., there are a lot of these food trucks. I call them roach coaches. But they've actually gotten a lot better, and some of the things that they're offering now are very artisanal in nature. So 10, 15 years ago, it was hot dogs and hamburgers, and now it's all kinds of different eclectic foods. And so that's a big trend. Anything local, and what's interesting about this is what local actually means is different to everyone. So to someone, local might be in the back of the parking lot of the restaurant I'm in, and to other people, it might be 500 miles or closer to where we're at. So local is really a moving definition, and it really depends on who you ask. Stew cuts and falls are popular. This is something where the chefs are now using the whole animal, the concept of not wasting anything. And so some of these cuts that typically would have gone to Asia are now staying in the United States, or they're coming into the United States from other places because the chefs are looking for interesting things to add to the dish. Finally, minimally processed is another big area. It's also the USDA's definition of natural at this point, which there really isn't a definition, and that's part of the problem. But minimally processed would be what the current standard is for that. A few other things. There's a big wave of energy in the country right now on a non-GMO approach. There's a group in Seattle, or in the Bellingham, Washington area that is cataloging every item that is non-GMO. And so this is becoming a big deal. We have a tiny state called Vermont, which is one of the smallest states in the country, and they came out with a law just recently that's basically said that anything that had genetically modified organisms in it had to be labeled that way. And so the tiny little Vermont is forcing all the major food companies in the U.S. to comply if they want to sell their products in Vermont. And Vermont's not a big market, but if that trend continues, it's going to affect everyone. So there's a lot going on there as it relates to how products are labeled. Most recently, just last week, there's a restaurant chain called Chipotle, which is a fast casual Mexican restaurant. It's a nationwide restaurant. They were sued in federal court for claiming to have product that was non-GMO. And in fact, the animals that were being fed genetically modified ingredients. And so there's some legal decisions that are coming down to determine how far down the supply chain do you have to go before you can call something GMO or non-GMO. So that's becoming a very big deal. Modernizing the supply chain, there are rising transportation costs in the U.S. supply chain right now, and with the cost of fuel going down globally, one might expect that those costs are actually going down, but the real cost in transportation isn't in the fuel, it's in the guy behind the wheel. There are actually more truck drivers between the ages of 60 to 64 years old in the United States than there are truck drivers under the age of 26. And so the trend, like farming and other types of businesses, is that the next generation, they don't want to do what their parents did. They want to go live in a big city. They want to do a different kind of job. And so jobs like truck driving are not as popular as they used to be. We do think that this is going to resolve itself through good old-fashioned economics. The cost is going up, the wages will go up, and as a result, more people will get into the trucking business. But for right now, there's a truck driver shortage in the United States, and it's really more driven around labor. In addition, the Food Safety Act is coming out. It's requiring more stringent standards on how temperature-controlled product is managed, and that is in various degrees of legislation right now, but we expect that regulation is going to be higher in the future than it is today. And then demand for local products is increasing. Obviously, you have to have a supply chain built for that if you're going to offer products that are local. In addition, we have better fast food is in high demand, and so some of the more traditional fast food restaurants like McDonald's and Burger King and places like that have seen their sales suffer at the hands of more contemporary concepts like the Chipotles of the world that are offering fresher, higher quality ingredients. In addition, this is the year of the worker. There have been some minimum wage laws enacted in certain states. New York is one of them that just came out with higher minimum wage, and it's a graduated process, but this is going to impact restaurants and people that serve food, and it's going to put pressure on food costs, because as your cost of labor goes up, the cost of goods to make whatever product is going to be under pressure. So that ties into what Mark just said regarding, at what price point are people willing to pay for the product, and if their labor costs go up significantly, it can really impact that. And then finally, the delivery revolution. Uber is now delivering food. You guys are familiar with Uber. Amazon is taking over in a lot of ways where people can get same-day service. If they want product, they can have it delivered right to their door in certain major markets. And so the traditional supply chain and distribution channels are being disrupted with technology, and that's something that everybody has to consider as they look forward. So where is the market in the U.S. headed? The population of the United States is growing less than 1%. And that's obviously a concern, but at the same time, restaurants represent 51% of the food dollar in the United States for the first time in history. So in the past, it's always been grocery store has outpaced food service, and in 2015, it actually switched over to the restaurant side. I do think that's good news for everybody in this room, especially as price points and higher quality cuts are generally reserved for the food service market, and the lower end cuts are generally sold in retail. So in addition to that, billions of dollars are headed to the e-commerce, and again, how the cold chain can be managed. I don't think it's going to happen as quickly in products like meat that have to be refrigerated and frozen, but they'll eventually get there. So when you look at the U.S. food service market, it's a $650 billion market, and that's really serviced by broadline distributors. These are people like Sysco, who's pictured here. They carry a wide variety of items, and they cover a wide variety of different types of customers. They'll cover restaurants, sporting facilities, schools, prisons, things like that. We get into the niche category, and in a lot of cases, these are meat or dairy produce type distributors that carry products that are harder to manage, and that's really where their business is differentiated from a broadliner. And then, there's about 10,000 different food service distributors that service the U.S. market. So some of them are large. Our largest distributor is Cisco, and there's regional and local distributors as well. So not only can they have different types of products that they sell, but they have different types of geographies that they cover. This is a slide that we like at Dot Foods. The current demand in food service is the highest it's been since 2004. So we look at that as a bullish sign. All indicators that we are looking at would indicate that it's not going down anytime soon. So as long as there's no major crisis in the world, we would expect that that trend would continue to go higher, which partly explains the spread between the food service and the retail and where we're headed there. So grocery is relatively flat, but in food service it's growing. When we look at the metrics of growth, when you look at 2009 and 2010, those were the recession years. The industry really took a major hit at that point, and gradually over the years we've really climbed back. And in 2015 we're at 4.5%. The lower price of gas has helped discretionary income, and about 80 cents of every dollar saved at the fuel pump has been determined that people use that money to eat out. So it's a major factor in our business. If you look at the overall business, the restaurant industry is a part of the food service, which is why there's a difference between the 466 billion versus the number I previously put up. There's about 529,000 restaurants. The average restaurant does about $881,000 a year in gross sales, and the top 500 restaurants make up about 60% of the market. When we look at it by segment, the fastest growing, the 5-year is the lighter, the brown shade on this graph. The red is the 1 year for 2015. And you can see that fast casual as well as fine dining are both leading the trend by a wide margin. So these are both 5-year and 1-year trends. And so for middle meats, high-end protein cuts, this is all good news, and we expect the good news to continue. Looking a little bit at the grocery market, there are 37,000 grocery stores in the United States. They all do it a little bit differently. Some grocery stores have their own distribution, meaning that they have their own warehouses that service their own stores. Publix, Safeway, and Kroger are 3 of the big names that do that. There's also independent grocery wholesalers that service stores that don't own their own distribution centers. And in addition to that, there are some specialty and natural distributors that will also sell into both grocery stores and to wholesalers on niche products. So the grocery trends, conventional brands are growing 1% to 2% a year. In fact, in some reports, it's almost 0. But the natural and organic trend is very, very popular in America right now. Those products are growing as a category by 11%. So they represent almost all of the growth as well as all of the incremental profit. And so anything tied to natural and organic is red hot right now, and it's really red hot in food service and it's red hot in grocery. So where are the opportunities? We think that food service share will continue to outpace retail. We think that millennials will be driving this trend. We've discovered that most millennials either don't know how to cook or don't want to, or both. Haven't quite figured out which one that is, but they're not big on cooking their own meals, which is good news for the food service industry. Natural and organic products are growing at a 10-fold rate faster than conventional items in retail. So this is a huge number. And in addition to that, people are willing to pay more for these products. So not only are they the only things growing in a grocery store, but they're only things growing that you can charge more for at the same time, which is why a lot of the different food outlets are really featuring these items. Whole Foods is a big player in the U.S. market, but recently Walmart and Kroger took over buying and selling more organic products than any other companies in America. So most people don't think of Walmart when they think of organic, but just their sheer size and scale and the fact that they're now playing in this space is a big deal. And then protein categories are very hot right now in both food service and retail. Protein is considered a healthy option. Lean meats is considered a healthy option. And I think you guys have a few of those last time I checked. So the U.S. supply chain is critical. So distributors play a key role in getting product to our end customer, whether it's a restaurant or a grocery store. But the U.S. supply chain is a complicated structure. It's channel specific, and what it is really, in food service, it's much more product focused. And so if you think about it, a chef in the back of a restaurant really cares how that product performs. And if you think about a meat manager in a retail grocery store, they're really not as concerned about how well the product performs as long as people are willing to buy it. And so it's a different type of sale, but food service is definitely more tied into the culinary benefits versus retail, which is more promotion and price driven. The wholesale distributor concerns, a lot of the customers that our customer buys from, there are pressures. So as you can imagine, the Walmarts of the world, the Safeways, the Krogers of the world, they demand very deep discounts for products to enter into their supply chain. The customer buying habits, customer loyalty can be challenging. And so if, as an example, if a distributor carries an item and they're selling it to a restaurant every week, and all of a sudden some other distributor goes into that restaurant and offers them the product at a nickel a pound cheaper, will they stay with who they have or will they leave? Well, if they leave, now the distributor that had that product stocked for them may be stuck with product. And so loyalty is a big issue, especially on an item that has limited shelf life. Driver shortages we talked about, getting enough drivers to haul the products that they've sold is critical. Category management, there's a lot of companies that will identify what type of product that they want, and they'll manage to one brand, and they'll have the different brands that are interested in their business negotiate against each other to see who's going to be the preferred vendor. New channel competition, some of this has to do with distributors playing outside of their lane, if you will. Maybe it's a food service distributor that's now going to sell convenience stores, or they're going to go sell grocery. So there's all kinds of companies out there that are trying to play in other people's backyards. And then obsolete risk and price risk. Mark mentioned it earlier. In a volatile category like meat or seafood, if an item is subject to market fluctuation and you're holding inventory, that can be really good news or really bad news or a combination of both. So a little bit about Dot Foods quickly. We're a company that started in 1960. We're family owned. We are the largest redistribution company in the United States. Our sales in 2015 were $6.2 billion US, and we have about 5,000 employees. We have distribution centers nationwide that allow us to ship a product anywhere in the country with a 3-day lead time and a 1-case minimum. So how this works with Mark is that we would pick up product from Mark in LA, we would put that product into our system, and a customer in New York City could order the item from us and buy 1 case of the product and have it arrive to them 3 days later. So we have our own trucks, our own fleet, our own employees, and we're really the only company in the US that can do this. So what do we do? We're a link really between manufacturer and distributor. So we're selling to the distributor who then sells to the restaurant or to the grocery store. We add service because it's a 3-day lead time, and for our customers that can't meet direct minimums, it allows them to buy literally 1 case of a certain product. And it really makes the supply chain a lot more efficient than what it would be otherwise. So if you look at this is a graphic that shows what a supply chain would look like without DOT. You have suppliers selling to distributors. Like I'd mentioned, there's 10,000 in food service alone. So they're all trying to get to every one of these. And with DOT, the product comes into DOT and it goes out in consolidated shipments. And so because of that, it allows us to do this a lot more economically than it may be otherwise. And I've got a price example here for you in a minute to illustrate that. So if you look at redistribution or without redistribution, what you have on the top graphic is you have a manufacturer, and in this case we would call Mark and Broadleaf a manufacturer. They have to send out LTL trucks, pool distribution or full truckloads to the distributor, who then takes the product to an operator. And with DOT, it streamlines the process. In this case, just as this example, there'd be 7 different payments from distributors back to Mark, whereas if we bought the product from Mark, we'd make 1 payment, and I think it's on time. I think the last time we paid it was on time, so that's good. I might be a long ride home if it wasn't. So our system really streamlines the whole process and takes cost out of the system. So let me give you a quick example here on a retail item. So we've got a product that's produced here in New Zealand. Broadleaf arranges the ocean freight. We're going to call this a boneless leg item that costs $6 US. And after the product arrives to Broadleaf, Mark puts his outrageous markup on it, which does include all those things that he talked about earlier. And so his published pickup price is $7 at the LA dock. So we would pick up in LA at $7, and then we add 35 cents a pound to the freight to get that anywhere in the US. So I think it's actually about the same price to ship it anywhere in the US through this system as what Glenn was describing to me, what it takes to ship product between the North and South Island here in New Zealand. So we can ship across a 2,500 mile landmass and make it happen in 3 days for that 35 cents. So that's one of the reasons that Broadleaf wanted to partner with us, was that we can get the product to where it needs to be at a more price competitive position, which hopefully allows for more demand and more volume. So in this case, a grocery wholesaler will put a 20% markup on that $7.35 price, and it will be sold to the grocery store for $8.82. The grocery store brings the product in. Their standard margin is 50%, so they add $8.82 in addition to the $8.82 that it costs to bring in. And so now it's $17.64 plus an additional 6% sales tax. So the final tab would be $18.70, which sounds like a lot, but how many people eat a full pound of a boneless leg at one sitting? There's probably a few out there, but mostly it's going to be divided into 3 or 4 portions. So if you divide that into 3 or 4 portions, now you're talking about a $6 portion, not an $18 portion. So you really have to think of it in terms of the portion. The other thing is that, it might seem outrageous to put a 50% margin. That's the standard that the grocery store has. In a lot of cases, they'll do less than that if it's on deal. But at the same time, they've got all the risk if the product goes bad and no one buys it. What do they do with the product if they have to unload it quickly? And so they do carry a fair amount of risk, plus the fact that about 25% of that gross margin is typically needed just to turn the lights on in the store. So they have a lot of overhead, a lot of cost. So it certainly isn't profit. It's to cover the cost so they can provide that type of an item to a grocery store shopper. If you look at the math on food service, it's similar. So again, we sell to the distributor. We bought it at $7 from Mark, $7.35 to the Cisco or whoever it might be. They're going to put a 20% delivery charge on the product and take it to a steakhouse or another fine restaurant. That price, again, comes in at $8.82. The restaurant's going to divide that pound into 3 equal portions. So when you look at that, it's going to be a $2.94 cost per portion. They're going to then multiply that back by 3 because food cost is generally about 1/3 of the cost of a menu item in a restaurant. So it goes back to $8.82 plus tax. So for under $10 US, you can have a fine meal with a high quality protein. So again, what seems like it might be outrageous on the surface, when you really look at the math on it, to be able to get the product all the way around the country is it's a challenge. And so the supply chain in America is efficient. So where do we go from here? I would tell you that protein demand is growing in the US. We have a strong desire for authentic, unique food experiences. There's a large affluent U.S. market that's willing to pay the price for these types of products. The supply chain is built and it's efficient and it works, and imported products have a unique story. So if there's one thing I could leave you with, it's that how you tell the story will dictate the success of the products that ultimately end up in the U.S. market, because our consumers are clamoring for the story. And if you've got a story that's interesting and unique, which you do, it's going to create opportunities to get new customers.